Legend of Zelda!
It's got Stolas. I'm not missing out on our gay owl delf.
Still want the gabagool?
You're damn fucking right I do.
Oh,
Luna's so scared. Why is she so scared? What will we do?
It's okay, Mare, it's okay.
Wow. A rock hard boner? Seriously?
They're kinky! You get it?
See hellhounds every day, and there hasn't been one.
How big? Okay, that's big.
I mean, besides the more serious and sad parts, it was a very standard Helluva Boss episode. There you got your comedy, people getting angry, specifically Blitz and Luna especially. Got collateral damage. Got innocent bystanders catching shots from everyone, both figuratively and literally. You got awesome fight scene, Eminem facing off against Stryker, and you got Luna going up against the Doctor and Blitz trying to run away from getting the shot. It was a pretty standard episode, other than the serious tones that it took, especially during all the, I guess I could say during the graphic scenes with Stolas being tortured basically by Stryker.
I think seeing Stolas kind of like in that manner was interesting, because it really just goes to show even further just how kind of like crap his life can be and is. Even though he's like this all-powerful being, he like still has his life shat on by multiple things, and he's not happy. You can the only thing really that's making him happy is these small spats, small moments in his life. But I'm still upset because like Blitzo didn't even respond to his message on his phone. You know, and even though he got a little bit of a dopamine response, like he needed support from Blitzo and he didn't fully get it.
I'm going to save my thoughts for the likes and dislikes section. Also, Daniel's not here for this. He's a little busy right now, but here's a quick summary of what he thought.
Fight between Stryker and Million Moxie was pretty good. Weird music choice and the funny moments with like Luna in the vet was also pretty funny, but the whole story itself just wasn't good. Unfortunately, it just kind of felt like, well, okay, that happened, and that's really all I have to say about it. Now, excuse me, I'm about to see the 10th anniversary of the greatest movie of all time, Sharknado.
It was alright. It wasn't like my favorite, but I feel like it was kind of tacked in there because people were complaining about moving along the plot.
I will say I'm glad that it did. It did move the plot forward because I've been waiting for that. I did like it better than some other episodes this season so far, but I mean, this episode, it was alright, I will say. It did keep my attention better than some others so far this season. It did have some like entertaining, funny moments. Like overall, it was alright.
Yeah.
It was good. Not great, but good. Definitely my third favorite out of the season so far.
Again, I liked the parts in regards to seeing Stolas how he is, and I love how he uses Blitzo. Even when he's getting tortured by Stryker, you know, he still mentioned Blitzo, how Blitzo has done worse in bed and stuff like that, or has done more and what have you. And it's this thing where it's like, it's just cool. Like, it's just interesting adding that little thing. I thought Stryker was kind of cool. He sounds like he's got like a gripe against like higher up kind of demons and stuff like that. So, and the aristocracy and all of that. So, it's kind of cool.
Stolas? Is that too obvious?
I liked they did go, I think, more Western than they did when Stryker was originally introduced. Like, they did go, like, they went the cliche, like, cinematic Western.
Like an old-timey, old-school Western movie when, like, the damsel's in distress and it needs to, they need saving.
Yeah, like, the nostalgia factor of it.
There was definitely that
nice.
nostalgia factor, I'll give it that. And I feel like I should probably specify, too, I don't like Stolas just because he's appealing aesthetically. I personally, I relate to Stolas on a very personal level. I find him an attractive character for more than one reason, not just looks. Like, yes, the design and everything, like, yes, I will admit that. But that's not all that I like about him. There are personal details that I will not get into, but let's just say, like, I feel for him, and I wish him nothing but the best, and he's a very tragic character in my opinion, and I love that. And he's portrayed very well, and realistically too. That is something that they touch on in the episode a little bit, especially his relationship with his daughter, which I think is great, despite all the abuse and bullshit that he puts up with Stella. And that carries through seasons 1 and 2, and I like that they're not shying away from that, no matter how much this season deviates from how it felt originally.
Yeah.
I like the fact that we got to see Andreophis. That was definitely a shocker for me. I thought he wouldn't be around until at least the next episode. I thought the fighting was good and the hospital scenes were interesting. Glad we got to see what Sloth looks like a bit.
Wow, I liked, of course, the comedy. You know me, I'm always a sucker for a good laugh. And I feel like I did enjoy the more serious tones because it really brought forth that how much peril, how much danger that Stolas was in. I mean, sure, it kind of a whiplash between the funny bits and that, but I mean, Helluva Boss does do comedy a lot. That's what it's basically known for, other than more violent and sexual stuff. I mean, even with the tonal whiplash at points, I still find it enjoyable.
The best part of the episode for me was Stolas, just without a doubt. He was the best part. Bryce Pingham does an amazing job as Stolas, always, so honestly, it would be really hard for me to ever say Stolas was a bad part in an episode. No matter what the scene was, I did feel bad for Stolas. Like, I feel for him. I felt for him, and that's always a plus in my book. Whenever Stolas was in trouble and danger, due to things I won't get into exactly right now, I still like felt a bit scared for him, but mostly from his perspective, from how he was viewing it was when I was like invested and like felt scared for him, but only through his POV. More on that in a bit. I actually do like how Stryker's trying to put on this facade of like how he's trying to fight for his lower class imps, but in reality he doesn't care. He really doesn't care. I sort of like that edge they're trying to go for, and I hope they build upon it a whole lot better than we've seen other characters of this sort of same ordeal be done. The other thing that I would say was a positive was the cinematography and the choreography for the fight scene between Stryker, Moxie, and Millie. That was amazing. That was a blast to watch on repeat after viewing the episode for the first time. It was really cool. And that's kind of like where the positives end for me. So as for the cons, yeah, I was not a huge fan of this episode. While I still felt like danger from Stolas, it was only through his POV, but that's just because I care about him as a character. Overall, in terms of how the episode played out, pacing, writing, and its structure, in my opinion, this might be the weakest episode of the season. The pacing was really fast. The writing in some areas was not really that good. The episode didn't really have much time to breathe unless it was between Stryker and Stolas, but those scenes were few and far between, and just a lot of choices that I just personally like do not agree with. The main one I want to get into is a complaint people have been having about the show for a while now, and that is the tonal whiplash issue that the show has. This has been rather a hit or miss type of deal with Helluva Boss, because sometimes it gets it right, other times not so much. And in my opinion, this episode, it had those issues, especially because of the fact that the episode is split with its A plot and B plot. It's not so much more focused on than the other. It's a full-on 50-50, where one is serious and like a rescue mission, the other is Blitz just messing around with Luna at a hospital, and it really does not add anything to the episode. It's mostly there for the lulls. There's hardly anything that's developed. There's not really a point to it. And while it was adorable to see Luna kind of acting like a puppy sort of deal, because, you know, puppies don't want to go to the vets, there wasn't really any point to it. Like, even after Blitz was done fighting with that Karen, I just had to ask, what was the point? That B plot with Blitz and Luna at the hospital really does conflict and contrast with what's going on with Stryker and Stolas. The whole thing should have been cut. I mean, I understand. For some reason, we have to have Blitz out of the picture for this particular episode so we can continue to drive a wedge between Blitz and Stolas' relationship. But we don't really need to show it, in my opinion, for this one. Just start out with having Blitz take Luna to the hospital and then send Moxie and Millie after Stryker. Cut there, and then have the rest of the episode focus in on essentially what's basically the best part of the episode, which is the stuff between Stryker and Stolas. You know, have that essentially be the main plot of the episode, with, of course, Moxie and Millie going to save Stolas. Then, once all that's said and done, and Millie and Moxie come back with Stolas in hand to basically get him to the hospital because he's injured, then we can show Blitz and Luna coming out of the hospital with the cone of shame on Luna's head, and we can have a brief moment of, sir, what happened to you? Then have like a quick cutaway to like, oh, here's like just like a one clip of like the shenanigans going down in the hospital, and there you go. You still have the lulls there, but now you have this extra time for certain aspects of this episode to breathe, like Andrelphus. We were excited for Andrelphus when he was like first teased, when we were still waiting on episode 8 of season 1. It was all this excitement, especially to finally see him in this episode. Like, it was so cool, but he doesn't do much. The only thing he's really here for is just another villain to set up, and that's it. There is some intrigue there with how he's kind of manipulating Stella. You know, he's obviously the brains, where Stella is just pure hatred. And I like that, but again, there's not that much time for it to breathe. In fact, in my opinion, Andrelphus should have had a little more screen time and a song dedicated to him. If this is the character's introduction, then there should be more to it. But we didn't have time for that because majority of the episode was dedicated to hospital shenanigans. And this leads into one of the other problems, which being that fight scene. Yes, it's cool, but the tonal whiplash here is heavy in this fight scene, because we keep cutting away from this really cool cinematic fight to, hey, here's something you would see in an 80s or 90s comedy film, and it really contrasts horribly. It, instead of like being like super engaged with it, it's kind of keeps pulling you out almost. This is especially shown with the song that's played, and as such, while it's cool to look at, the experience itself, you know, like the, hey, you know, these are the characters, and like they're fighting each other, and like there's all this like tension and drama between the characters, it's diminished because it's essentially played for a joke. The spectacle is happening, but there's nothing about it that feels intense. It's just there for the look, but there's not really any drive behind it. And as such, it makes the fight scene and the whole episode feel unbalanced.
I didn't like how arguably our main antagonist Stella was moronic in obtaining Stolas' inheritance. Like, she didn't think this plan through at all. I didn't like how Stryker wasn't as threatening as his first appearance, and I didn't like a lot of the jokes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know that Helluva Boss is full of them, but I'm slowly getting very tired of the horny jokes.
And kind of, it was, honestly, it felt like a faster episode
It
than the
was.
others have been.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they kind of tacked it in there because fans were complaining that we were getting more backstory than we were getting plot moving episodes.
I understand that they need to have the backstory and like that helps and people like it. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just at some point you can't have too many beach episodes like in an anime. Like you can't have so much filler that your plot doesn't go anywhere. There are only certain situations where that works, and I don't feel like it's really working in the context of this. I'm not saying that I'm not enjoying myself. Like, I'm just hitting the point where I'm like, okay, all right, yep, we've moved like maybe 2 inches since the last episode, or the last season even, and I feel like this whole season almost, like maybe that is a dislike about this whole season maybe for me, is kind of it almost has like a tone issue. But that doesn't mean that I'm not entertained.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more. It's been a lot more like filler. And don't get me wrong, in some of the filler episodes, they have introduced, some things. Something obviously like Moxie's dad is gonna come up again, especially with like how that ended and everything.
Absolutely.
But overall, it was still a filler episode with Moxie's backstory. Overall, that's what it was. It wasn't really like a plot mover.
Yeah, it's just kind of like it's introducing new things when we haven't even wrapped up old things.
Yeah.
Because the way the last season ended too, I feel like that season ended literally with Blitz like crying on the couch after the whole Aussies bullshit. And like it's like other than the first episode, what was it, the circus of season 2, I feel like we just forgot about that entirely. It doesn't seem like that doesn't even exist anymore, I feel like.
Yeah.
We're moving further and further away from that, and I almost want to go back to that because that's what I loved in the first season, was that relationship dynamic, because that, as I said before, it's a little too close to home for me. So, it just, that just might be me though. I don't know. Some other people might have enjoyed it a little bit more, but I'm not saying I didn't, actually. Yeah, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it, but we do have those gripes, I feel like.
While it was cool to see Stryker return and have Millie and Moxie fight him again, on rewatch, it actually kind of makes me a bit upset because this is the rematch. This is the second battle between Stryker, Moxie, and Millie, and it just kind of comes and goes. It's like, it feels more like, oh, Stryker is the villain of the week that's returning. They fight him, he gets away again, and that's that. It's like, no, he is essentially Moxie and Millie's rival, and this is the second battle. This is the rematch. This needed more tension. This needed more build-up. Building up the fact that these three have fought before. Stryker almost like killed Millie and especially Moxie. But granted, they were able to beat him with the help of Blitz, but now Blitz is not there. Are they ready? Are they prepared? Build up some character here and have the moment breathe and build it up to the rematch. So when it happens, it's all the more epic. There's a whole lot more emotion to it, and it's all the more amazing to watch. But because there isn't any of that, it just falls flat. I really enjoy Stryker, and I did not mind the voice actor change. I really don't. I understand why. And Edward Bosco did a good job. But with some of the stuff that we saw here, especially the statue with the huge boner, that felt out of character. Like, I understand Stryker can be full of himself. I got that feeling a bit from when we first saw him. But again, because of the fact that it's like rushed, not really explored as much, it just comes off a bit sloppily. And again, why was that statue there? I have so many issues with this statue. Why? It does not feel like a Stryker thing. I'm going to sound like everyone else in the fandom. It really does feel more like a Chaz thing. Why? But because of, again, the tonal shifts and the constant contrasting between the A and B plot, there's not that whole much tension because they keep contrasting and conflicting with each other. So as such, it's hard to tell, should we be laughing? Should we be scared? Like what was the feeling we're supposed to go for here? Essentially, it's letting us know that things will be fine because of the fact that it's still trying to be funny. And because of that, it's like, well, then why should we be, scared for Stolas? And the thing that doesn't help is actually when Stryker gets the call saying not to kill Stolas. And again, that diminishes the tension even more from the fight scene. Honestly, what they should have done is reverse the order of things. Have it to where Stryker is about to kill Stolas, then Moxie and Millie show up. They're fighting. You have a really cool fight scene, and again, leave the hospital stuff out. It's super cool. Stryker gets the jump on both Moxie and Millie, and seeing that he has a moment now and that he can't fuck around anymore, he goes in to kill for Stolas. Millie and Moxie are too injured to really do anything at the moment. They need a breather, and then Stryker gets the call. Stella says, "Don't kill him. We need the brick alive." And then he goes, "Yes, ma'am." He breaks his flip phone, and then, seeing the opportunity, Moxie tries to go in for one last punch. Stryker then gets away.
Felt like there was a bit of a disjoint with Luna and what was going on with Stolas. So it's like you have the funny comedic part, and then you have what's going on with Stolas. And that could have been some fancy thing in terms of writing, like basically saying like, oh yeah, Blitzo couldn't be asked to come along in order to help Stolas. But I guess it was a big eye-opener when he realized that Stolas was hurt, because he thought Stolas couldn't get hurt, but Stolas was.
I just liked having to see Stella again.
Oh. And one other thing that I completely forgot to mention, but I have to say it. While the overall ending hospital scene was really nice and really good, though not as strong as what it could have been because the majority of the episode had tonal whiplash and was off balance, the text messages. Those text messages have to be paused in order to read them. So not only is it a blink and you'll miss it character development thing, but within the text messages is essentially the conclusion, the resolution of what happened at the date night at Ozzy's. The tensions and everything between Stolas and Blitz, and the talk we wanted them to have, or at least bring up and avoid it, just mention it, but they didn't, and what we were hoping for they did in episode 2, but again they didn't. All of that is contained within those messages. And it's a blink and you'll miss it moment. And what that means is a plot point we were hoping to see some development on, have some conclusion on to enter the next step of it, was resolved off screen.
I liked the song in it, but I didn't enjoy how they handled it, because again it felt kind of tacked in there, and then it shifted to Stryker being like, "Will you shut up?" And so it just kind of...
I get it was played off as a joke, but the way it was thrown in there didn't even feel like it. I feel like the songs were just kind of thrown in there as jokes.
Well, I felt like that song got thrown in there because all the other episodes either has a musical number or has a specific song to it. So I felt like they had to add that song because all the other episodes do. It would stand out if it didn't.
Yeah, I can see that definitely. I don't even really think I could classify them as songs. Yeah, there was music, featured music, almost like a soundtrack. But
no, there was that one about Stryker.
Yeah, I know. I'm putting that in the same category. Because to me, that doesn't even
Sure, it wasn't really anyone singing. It was kind of, again, it was like a theme song for him. It necessarily wasn't a plot mover.
Yeah. If you want to call it, his villain song, I think they can do better.
Yeah.
Like, I get, like, because Stolas is like, how does one get their own theme song? Like, I get that that's the joke, but at the same time, it's like, with Stryker, you hype him up so much, and, like, fans love him, I know. I feel like they could have done better.
Yeah.
I really feel like they could have done better.
It's kind of like, part of it, I think, is I know fans are super excited for each episode, and so they're trying to get them out faster so they can please more people, they don't lose their audience. But it's also, with pushing things out faster, you lose a certain amount of quality to it.
Yeah.
That you really need.
That's why you gotta appreciate fanon sometimes. Because, like, that shit, like, can take longer to come out sometimes, but the quality for that is, like, worth the wait a lot of the time, more often than not, I feel like. Maybe that's just my involvement in fanon after so long, that, like, talking about some sort of canon work is its own thing, but, you know, these are just, two people's opinions on the internet.
There weren't that many, but Stryker's theme song hits hard. It's definitely got some Johnny Cash hints to it, but still, it's so badass.
Stryker's theme was funny. They definitely were taking inspiration from Rango, I want to say. Yeah, I mean, sure, you could say, oh, they're taking inspiration from Western movies and Western songs, what have you. But I just recently watched Rango, and it gives me the vibe of those fucking Owls quartet, which is fucking awesome, and it's funny as hell. And it just reminded me a lot about those, like, Owls.
The Ballad of Stryker was a pretty fun song. I quite enjoyed it. It reminded me of the little montage scene in Rango, especially with the imps, the tiny imps doing the song, and reminded me of the owls, playing the instruments. It was a fun, and on repeat, it's a banger. It's a catchy banger. I hope they can release the song on Spotify so I can add it to my playlist. It's a pretty good song. As for the song during the fight scene, the first part where it was having that sort of like epic western tune to it, pretty cool. It was fitting the fight scene, but when it switched to the pop version, on its own, it's catchy and to some degree it's enjoyable. The issue, though, is the context, and that's what brings it down for me. So, Ballad of Stryker, hey, it's pretty good. What you thinking about? Meh.
Well, the first song that we heard was the Ballad of Stryker, I think is what it's called. And, it's your typical standard ballad about a cowboy, that you typically hear in Western movies. Even with the that whole riff that continues, yeah, it felt very in place. And then towards the end, we got during the fight scene, we got that song on the radio. It was basically supposed to be just like your typical vapid sounding pop song about nothing, like a "Call Me Maybe" by Carly Rae Jepsen type song, and it was very unfitting for the scene, obviously, but that was a joke, and it made me laugh.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if it's because they're on such a timestamp to make as many as they can, considering they're apparently making 12 episodes this season, but there's definitely a drop of quality from earlier episodes. Not that I blame Viv or her team. I understand how this can have a few flaws. I'm not against that in the slightest because they're, working on such a tight schedule. Because regardless of whether or not there's a few technical issues in these episodes, it's still a hell of a good time.
Again, as I said before, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Here, it didn't. So just to some degree, yes, the show does have some tonal shift issues.
I can't really say if it's an issue or not, because I mean it's put there for a reason. I mean, you can't have a Helluva Boss episode that's totally serious and sad and upsetting Helluva Boss is, at the end of the day, it's a comedy series, so. But, like, a lot of comedic series, there's going to be points where there's going to be serious stuff going on. Just off the top of my head, thinking back to the Powerpuff Girls, when the episode where they made their fourth sister. You know, at the end of the episode, spoiler alert if you hadn't seen it, I'm pretty sure it's like almost 20 years old at this point, the episode, or over 20 years old, but at the end of the episode, basically dies, and especially after saving her sisters, it's a very somber ending to an episode that, I mean, it did have its funny points, but it was also very upsetting in some ways. It's kind of what this episode was. It was supposed to do the same thing, and it achieved it. Now, whether the shifts are an issue or not, I guess it could be worked on to get the timing of them better, but I mean, they're there for a reason. I guess that's what I'm trying to say at the end of the day.
Well, we kind of touched a bit on that. There was a conflict between the funny and the not funny. Yeah, there was definitely like a clash with that. Because like when you're writing and when you're animating, I like it when writers stick to a theme for an episode and they kind of stick to it to make your audience feel that theme and that, you know, whatever you want your audience to feel. Instead of feeling two things, you know, you got to lean towards one theme and not like 50-50 it. Otherwise, it's going to be really disjointed in terms of the tone. And that's just kind of like writing 101. It's like if at the end of Berserk, fucking Griffith was like, Batman, and landed and met Costco and was like, hey, how you doing? You want to go to a fucking bar or something? Like, it'd be a massive tonal shift from all the fucking death and carnage to, oh, Griffith being a fucking comedic person, you know, and just making jokes and shit at something serious. Detaches the weight of a story when you do that a lot of the time. Yeah, like I wish they kind of picked one and balanced it out, because otherwise it would have just been, I just felt it was disjointed because of that. Still had fun though, got to see Luna, and that goat doctor was pretty cool.
I've said it already, yes. I definitely think it has.
It kind of depends on the individual one for me, because there were some of them that I'm like, oh yeah, no, that kind of was needed. Yeah.
It just feels like every single episode we jump to something new. Because episode 1 of season 2 was backstory of how Blitz and Stolas met, and then how that correlates to where they are now, and also Stolas finally divorcing Stella. Like, Jesus Christ. Right. And then episode 2 is, oh, all of a sudden, like the beginning of the episode was like, oh, okay, yeah, they're kicking Stella out and getting all her stuff to her so she's not living in the house anymore. Okay. And then it jumps to LA shenanigans. And then episode 3, like, I'll give it credit, it did give us a little bit into Moxie, which I feel like was needed. Like, the episode, the storyline that we didn't know we needed until we had it.
Yeah.
Which, like, I didn't mind it, but just, it was ruined for me by Chaz. And then this episode, yeah, I haven't done enough of this to feel like, or to have an opinion on, like, if, when you're doing a show, if all your seasons are supposed to, like, relate back to each other, but I guess just this season, it almost feels like the first season didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it. And that is a tone issue for me. And the pacing this season, that big whole ramble that I went on before, the pacing is all over the place. Like, for me. And we're jumping from one thing to another, and I need things that have structure every once in a while, I guess. That's my thought on it. And you felt like, I feel like this episode went a little too fast for you, or?
They're in the cafe talking and fighting, and then suddenly Stryker shows up and he's kidnapped, and then he's being tortured, and then Moxie and Millie come and rescue him, and then, yeah, it's like super, super really fast paced.
And then also Stella's brother is here too.
Yeah, that Stella's brother's introduction is through that. Like, you don't even get you know, I don't know. I don't know if he'll be a big character coming up, but he seems like he'll be a big character coming
They
up.
set
And
it
that,
up for that, yeah.
well, and then having that kind of introduction, it was like, what to take seriously.
Yeah, what do you take seriously? And also, like, I feel like I didn't even get the chance to really get anything about Andreolphus's character.
Yeah, like,
Like,
is he gonna be somebody that we're absolutely gonna hate, or...
Like, I have no idea. Maybe that's the point, but that's lost on me. Like, if that's the point they were trying to make, that is absolutely lost on me.